Fast forward to the last few years, you win a Grammy
Yeah.
for working with one of the most legendary, iconic artists of all time, Sting
Yeah.
and Shaggy.
Yeah.
With Don't Make Me Wait.
Yep.
When I saw it again, I'm a fan from afar. I'm like, I was so proud. I'm like, my guy, you know what I'm saying? I'm talking like we've been hanging out. I'm like, my guy Cam just won a Grammy. Well, even when you got the placement, I was excited. And then to watch it go from there to you actually winning the Grammy. Tell me about that experience, being on the road with Sting, the whole deal.
Great experience. I think I talk about it more in a more candid way now than I used to. Part of that is politics.
Sure.
You know, when you get involved with somebody who's worth over $600 million, it's not about you. You know,
Right.
Not too many people understand that concept, especially because, like, in the music industry, you got to walk into the room and make it about you.
Yeah.
That's what people want to see all the time.
Right.
But when you are in the car and you're in the back seat on the right, behind the passenger side, you're not driving, you're not the co-pilot, you're
no
just
control.
you're in the car.
Yeah.
Now you may put in on the gas, which is what I did. You get what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
got us started, but even though you get the car started, you're still not driving. You still may not know how to get there, so you still have to show some deference to the OGs that are involved. And it actually made it easy for me because I grew up listening to Sting.
That's right.
You know, it was a bucket list thing for me.
Yeah.
So they probably could have taken advantage of me, you know what I'm
Sure,
saying,
sure,
in some
sure.
business ways. And I would have been like, all right, cool.
Can we talk? Can we talk? Can we talk? R&B.
What's good? What's good? It's your boy Ian Vaughn. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Can We Talk R&B podcast. And I have a very, very special guest today. This guy, I've been a fan 5-6 years. He's a Grammy Award winning songwriter, producer, incredible guitarist. He also speaks French, guys. I have none other than my homeboy, Kameron Corvet.
Hey, what's up?
How are you, brother?
Good.
Yeah, thank you for coming, man.
No problem.
Yeah. We just tapping in, bro. Like, I've been sliding your DMs for a while. Like, bro, like, yo, I'm supporting you, man. I'm a fan, da-da-da-da. And I have no ego as an artist, as a songwriter, whatever. Above anything, I'm a fan of the art. So anytime I see someone who I consider to be true to it, you know what I'm saying, I'm always reaching out or willing to reach out and just kind of, build community with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So thank you for coming.
No problem. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I think more artists would benefit by being able to follow your lead. You know what I
For
mean?
sure.
I
for
consider
sure.
myself a similar type of artist, so it's
Yeah.
refreshing to
Yeah.
get energy like that from somebody in the community.
For sure. Look, I mean, maybe that's because we got that southern hospitality,
Yeah.
built in the pedigree. You know what I mean?
sure.
Yeah. So you're from originally, like, I mean, I'm just learning this, just obviously talking off air. So I want to start from the beginning of your whole journey. But turns out you're from my hometown.
Yeah, I was born in Baton Rouge. Yeah, my dad went
crazy.
to Southern, and my mom worked at Earl K. Long Hospital.
Wow.
And that's where I fell in love with music, where I got a lot of the information that I use to kind of navigate through life.
Yeah.
But yeah, Baton Rouge, man.
Man, first of all, you're from Baton Rouge if you know Earl K. Long. Period. They shut it down since then, but you're an OG if you know about Earl K. Long. That's what's up. So take me back, all right, from the beginning. I mean, obviously being from Louisiana originally, we have a lot of incredible musicians, whether that's in the church, whether that's in the jazz world, whether that's in the clubs. Like, it's a real scene at home that, the industry's not there, but the musicians are there, the singers are there, the talent is there. Talk about how maybe that has influenced you, or.
I think growing up in Baton Rouge, my first exposure to music was, through my parents. And I think they played a huge role in exposing me to a wide variety of music.
Yeah.
So when I was going to and from school, we would listen to a lot of pop radio, a lot of top 40s, which at the time was very integrated when it comes to genre.
Sure.
You know, there wasn't, I mean, it was pop, but it was more true to form of popular music. So you could hear a Michael Jackson or a Prince or a Stevie Wonder or Madonna or
Sure.
so growing up with that, that was the genre that for me, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? I really
Yeah.
didn't get exposed to more traditional R&B or other types of what we consider to be like Black American music until I got a little older, but definitely Baton Rouge, I equate Baton Rouge with learning, with loving music.
Yeah.
And a lot of times as a songwriter, I look at those days when it comes to informing me on how to write. Like,
Yeah.
okay, would 7-year-old Cam understand this song? Would he remember it? You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? So Baton Rouge shaped that part of my career for sure. And I even, you know, definitely wanted to do something in the creative arts, but I just didn't know for sure what it was going to be back then.
Yeah, yeah. So from there, you went from, you moved from Baton Rouge at some point, but I know those, it's funny that you mentioned that, like, I hear, you mentioned the pop radio, and like, you mentioned Michael Jackson, you mentioned Prince, Stevie Wonder, 3 of the all-time greats, some of my biggest inspirations as well. I can hear that in your music. Like, I really can. Like, I can hear when I listen to your music, it doesn't feel to this or to that. It feels soulful. It feels passionate. It feels real. You know what I mean? And as a musician, I can hear and feel the musicality. You know what I'm saying? But it's not overly done in a
Yeah.
way that you're like trying to, you know what I mean? It's like, I feel all of that. And that's what Prince, Stevie Wonder, and Michael Jackson all did very well.
Yeah.
Which is kudos to you for that, because I look at you as someone I was telling someone I was going to have you on the show. And they were like, yeah, you think he's dope. You think he's going to be like the next whatever? I said, you know, I don't know what he's going to be, but I can tell you one thing. Everyone who hears it is can't do nothing but respect it and love it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's almost like what Bruno Mars does, but not so pop.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And you know, going through and navigating this industry, you get challenged with who you are and who you're looking to become.
Yeah.
Not that you're trying to become somebody else, but who your future you will be. You
Sure.
know, if you're not in this industry thinking about that, then you're in for some heartache. You know,
Sure.
when it comes to even meeting somebody that you really respect and
Yeah.
and that person saying, you know, critiquing you or something like that, it could tear somebody's dreams up. But I think for me, I've never been opposed to putting myself in the system. Not necessarily to change, but to see kind of, it's kind of like give and take. Really, you the audience is why we do this. Really, otherwise you could just play, sing at home,
Sure.
and still be just as fulfilled musically. But once you endeavor on making music part of your business, you have to consider the consumer, and you have to consider, you know, the powers that be that are involved. And I think what I've tried to do is live up to those influences the best that I can, but also make music that I know will reach the most people as possible. And, you know, and I think that just takes a little bit of logic, a little bit of common sense, and research, and anything else. I think people look at the music industry like it's so much luck and this and that, and you will realize that it isn't as much luck as people may think. There are definitely some lucky, you know, people out there, but if you look at a lot of the stars, you can trace their roots back to a humble beginning, and just being dedicated, and you know, that type of thing. Anybody can do.
Absolutely. So, going back to your upbringing, you leave Louisiana, you move to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
How long were you there for?
I was only there for 7 years. I left home at 17, never came back. So technically speaking, I lived in Baton Rouge longer than Cincinnati.
Gotcha. Okay.
But those formative years, 10 to 17,
Yeah.
you know, you're going to really discover who you are. Plus, I had family, like a large extended family in Cincinnati. So
Gotcha.
my mom is from Cincinnati, and our family like dates back 100 years plus of musicians.
Wow.
singer-songwriters. So I was able to kind of, there's a story about the ugly duckling, if you will, and the ugly duckling thinking that, it's ugly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was a swan the whole time.
Nice.
But just wasn't used to being around swans. It was around ducks.
That's
because
right.
it wasn't a duck,
Yeah.
assumed it wasn't good enough.
Gotcha.
And I think when you are black in America, helps to see people around you that look like you. But for me, like being around family, just made it that much more special, because I could say, I belong to them, they belong to me. So I got a lot of self-confidence and pride in who I was as a black kid, and eventually a black man in Cincinnati. And I think that gave me the spark to really want to pursue music.
Sure.
To be in Baton Rouge and be like, I don't know why I love music so much, and then to go and meet all my cousins and stuff, and everybody plays an instrument, everybody sings.
Yeah.
I'm like, I get it. You know? So you feel this sense of like a right of, like you belong to it. It's your right to want to be this. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's got some killer musicians in Ohio. Bro.
Oh yeah, there's some beasts. I mean, Cleveland definitely gets a lot of the recognition. Dayton too. I mean, we think about Zapp and Roger and all of that, but Cincinnati, obviously, Bootsy Collins, High Tech on the rap side. There's some up and coming folks as well, but it's always been important to me, whether it's Baton Rouge or Cincinnati, it's the same narrative.
Sure.
You want to give the city something that they can be proud of, and that's definitely part of my inspiration.
Absolutely. So how I first found out about you some years ago, a good friend of mine, shout out to Kelly. I think I was doing a show in Atlanta. This might have been 2017, 16, I can't remember specifically. And I was opening up for Eric Roberson.
Okay.
And he was like, man, they got this cat named Kameron Corvet. You would love him, like that. And I'm like, send me the link or whatever. So he sends me Going Under.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, when I heard that record, bro, I was like, oh, who is this cat? You know what I'm saying? Because first of all, the vocals are there. Again, it's not like you just like going overboard, but I know that I can hear that when you just, I know what's going on, right? As a musician, I know what's going on as a singer. So I'm listening to that record. I'm listening to the writing of the record. Obviously, it's just you something that we all love to do. Go under. You know what I mean? Something that we all love to do, and you so poetically wrote these lyrics and portrayed this story, and you can see the visual. It's tasteful, it's romantic, it's sexy. You know what I mean? It's just dope. Like, what inspired you on that song?
Man, I was around that time I was introduced to Slum Village.
Oh yeah.
And I ended up having a crazy time in Detroit. I went to Detroit in the summertime, stayed with them, and they pretty much, I was very intoxicated the entire time. And I come from, my dad was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. He's retired. Okay. He's also an attorney. So I come with a little bit of a strict, sense of discipline and that type of thing. So it can make me a little bit hard on the exterior. Sure. Music has always been the outlet by which I could get those feelings out or what have you. But, Going Under just kind of came about because I was trying to escape, let's say, what I was traditionally doing at the time, which was everything was a guitar-based song that I was coming up with, And, for me, soul, it just hits you. It doesn't matter what kind of how it comes from. So went up to Detroit, really got cool with those guys. We did some work on some other projects. Then when I came back, my guy, young RJ, sent me the instrumental for it. And it was in my earlier days of recording myself and everything like that. And I just was like, man, let me try to write to this.
So this is one of your earlier songs?
I had been writing for easily 10 years prior to that.
Gotcha.
But everything was just me, you know?
Gotcha.
I was so focused on the guitar playing, singing, songwriting thing, and which is I still am hyper focused on that, but it was a departure from that for one of the first times.
Gotcha.
And it just came very, very natural.
Nice.
To me. There are a lot of different songwriting techniques people use.
Sure.
A lot of people create melody first, and then this wasn't really that type of thing. Certain times the song just comes out line by line from the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just simple, man, and it registered, and we ended up doing a whole little EP after that, you know, and
I didn't realize that. So you did that with Slum Village.
yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So we've collaborated off and on ever since then. Nice. Always good people and everything like that. But they were super focused on getting me to relax and chill. I would be like right on the metronome every time. They're like, nah, you gotta come back off of it. You know, they like stuff super laid back. Like, yeah, you know. So
weren't they? So I have connection to the D. Weren't they connected? I remember from the beginning with Dwele.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So
it was actually Going Under was actually for Dwele.
Come on.
Yeah, it was actually for Dwele because
I could hear that.
Young RJ was like, "Yo, do you want to give it to Dwele?" And I was like,
I want to hold on to this.
Yeah. And I felt like he could do it or whatever, but it was prior to me venturing into songwriting as an occupation. So, I knew it was special and I kept it, but definitely.
Nice. Shout out to Dwele. That dude was killer. I did back in the day, 2003, 4, I believe, maybe 5. I did a band I was with. We did a few shows with him.
Okay.
Back in the day, but big fan of him. He was always killer.
Super dope.
Wow. So that actually brings a little just synergy for me. Doing this show that I love. I guess doing the show, what I love is I'm learning, right?
Yeah.
Because as a musician, I got a bunch of assumptions, right? It's not like it used to be. We used to just open up, you got liner notes, I just could see what's going on. Now I have a bunch of assumptions. I'm like, man, I hear this melody, that sounds like this person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or I heard this, the way he approached this feels like this guy. So I'm guessing. And I'll be honest with you, I'm probably 90%, 85, 90% correct every time. So I'm always excited when I'm hearing, now that you're saying that, although I didn't assume that, now that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
That sound that they had, that's awesome. But that record is what introduced me to you, and from then I just been like, Kameron Corvet, anything you drop, I've been checking into it. So
I appreciate that.
What is it? What's the one you just dropped? Let me just pull out my phone, make sure I'm
Count You Twice, maybe.
Count You Twice. I'm up on that one, but you just You With Me.
You With Me. Oh yeah.
I love that record.
Yeah.
I love that record.
Another random thing, you know, and that's the other thing I realized. You gotta leave room for God to be involved in the creative process and in the process of getting a record where it needs to go.
Yeah.
None of my bigger placements have occurred by my own doing.
Sure.
It's always been just write the record and the rest will take care of itself. So You With Me wasn't even intended to be released. It was literally like, it wasn't a work for hire, but it was created in that way. You know? I got an opportunity to pitch some songs for BMF, and you know, they gave us a brief, and that's one thing I think I excel well in, just being a creative writer by nature.
Yeah.
If you give me, you know, a brief of any sort, or we have a conversation, I understand, I can pretty much nail it. So,
nice.
I mean, my guy, a producer that really taught me a lot about the game. He sent me some records. He works a lot on that show and some other shows. He sent me a few records, and I'm like, all right. He's like, yeah, we kind of wanted to be 80s, you know, vibes, you know, more traditional R&B, and I'm like, all right, cool. And
man, you nailed it.
Yeah,
you're giving me more insight. I had no idea that. So that actually was one of the records that was placed on that show.
Yeah, so it came out on season 2 of BMF, the first episode, and you never know with one of those songs whether or not it's going to be in a part of the show where people will even hear it.
That's right.
People could be talking over it.
That's
it could play for 5 seconds.
That's right.
So I didn't really
know where it was going to land.
I didn't, and therefore I didn't really promote.
Yeah.
I didn't really, you know, I had no expectation. Then it came out, and it ended up being in a very good scene where Lala's in the scene and there's nobody talking over it. It was at least about 30 seconds worth of playtime. Nice. So that's what caused it to be released. We weren't even, really wasn't even going to be released. But because of the demand, we were like, all right, I gotta put it out. And
that's crazy.
It's been doing well. So
what's amazing about, I guess, about the industry, specifically about what you're doing, that what you're saying, you know, it's about like being prepared, right?
Yeah.
You're just making music, you're preparing all the time, and you're staying in the zone. I'm a songwriter. I'm always critiquing my songs. I'm always critiquing other people's music, but I'm always trying to be better. And I can be all the way frank. I do listen to some of your records, and I'm like, I want to approach some of these, because sometimes I'm adapting to what's going on right now, which is cool.
It is.
But other times, like the true me is actually, when I'm listening to your songs, I'm like, this is me. Like, this is maybe in a conversation, this is what I would have said.
Yeah.
This may not be what I would have written specifically. It depends. So when I listen to your music, it inspires me in that way. I'm just, this is me giving you your flowers in that regard. The F Love Project. That one, I can't remember that was maybe 2019, 2018. It was older than that?
2012.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay, I was put on that album around, I would say 2018.
Okay.
That project is, again, Going Under was on that project. That's the one that, like, really, obviously, when I was introduced to that song. So I guess that's the dates I had wrong. So, of course, around the time when I mentioned around 17 is when I was 16, 17 is when I was introduced to you. So it was around that time. Yeah.
I did re-release it, though, as a part of Essentials in 2019.
There you go.
So
that's okay.
Just to see you on it.
Okay, all right. So I'm like, I know I'm missing something. So you re-released it, but you had some different variation, some of the production.
No, it was still the same record, but when you're an independent, you could put out 5 projects before you really have a catalog by which to have a career. That could be touring. That could be doing something like I did, which was releasing Essentials. I was actually brought to me by one of our Baton Rouge brothers, TQ. He was like, man, I think you should put it, kind of like a best of together.
Yeah. Shout out to TQ. That's my dog, man.
That was his idea, and I was like, you know what, maybe I should. So put together a project, and it's a really good project for what it was, and that really it was one of those another aha industry moment.
Yeah.
Songwriters and stuff, and vice versa. We look at each other as opposition sometimes. And at the end of the day, you have to work together in order to really be successful. So, that was another moment for me where I'm like, you know what? I've done 5 projects. Yeah. And it's taken 5 projects to get a strong 12. Mm-hmm. And I understand that made me understand why when people are recording who have major label budgets, let's say, they may do 50 records.
100 records.
And then they choose the best 12.
That's right.
It makes sense. Now, to me, the artist side, the creative side, it doesn't make sense because you lose continuity. Mm-hmm. That song that you did that was the first song you did that was a smash, song 35 that was a smash, song 49, you're in a different place.
That's right.
You could be angry at song 49. You
That's
could
right.
be, so it's like, I'm a storyteller. I like projects that tell stories. I'm one of those guys. I like to go on a ride, on a journey. I don't really like it to be a potluck of just different sounds, different subjects.
Sense.
Yeah, so
it's almost like a set list. So you're performing live, so it makes sense. You're creating a mood. I got you.
That's exactly the way I do my set list too. Like, I understand that the audience is, especially if they don't know you, their attention span is short.
Yeah.
So, I do every other. I hit you with a cover, then I'll hit you an original.
100.
Hit you with a cover, hit you with an original. But the through line is the story. So if it's just me and an acoustic, which is really, how I've gotten a lot of my success, and this is a whole nother conversation, just not going with what works for you.
Yeah.
Once you realize what works for you, you got to go with that.
For sure.
So the acoustic thing is like we're here, we're just chilling, talking, and there's going to be something that we say that's going to make me think of a song. I'm like, you know what? you know,
yeah.
And that makes it less of a show and more of like an experience.
Absolutely.
So from just the acoustic thing all the way to like a full band thing, the set list thing, that's the way that I do it.
No, absolutely. But we're speaking the same language because honestly, I do it exactly the same way.
Yeah.
That makes me smile. I'm like, yeah, that's what's up. Makes me know I'm on the right track.
Yeah.
With that said, so you've had a lot of, obviously as an independent artist, and I know it's a lot more difficult because you're funding most of the stuff yourself. You're being the artist, you're being the business guy, you're being your own manager a lot of times. When you're doing that, and then big opportunities, the BMF placement. I'm sure you've had other placements on television and so forth. Fast forward to the last few years, you win a Grammy for working with one of the most legendary, iconic artists of all time, Sting.
Yeah.
And Shaggy.
Yeah.
Wait, don't make me wait.
Yep.
When I saw it again, I'm a fan from afar. I'm like, I was so proud. I'm like, my guy, you know what I'm saying? I'm talking like we've been hanging out. I'm like, my guy Cam just won a Grammy. Well, even when you got the placement, I was excited. And then to watch it go from there to you actually winning the Grammy. Tell me about that experience, being on the road with Sting, the whole deal.
Great experience. I think I talk about it more in a more candid way now than I used to. Part of that is politics.
Sure.
You know, when you get involved with somebody who's worth over $600 million, it's not about you. You know,
Right.
Not too many people understand that concept, especially because, like, in the music industry, you got to walk into the room and make it about you.
Yeah.
That's what people want to see all the time.
Right.
But when you are in the car and you're in the back seat on the right, behind the passenger side, you're not driving, you're not the co-pilot, you're just you're in the car.
Yeah.
Now you may put in on the gas, which is what I did. You get what I'm saying? I got to start it. But even though you get the car started, you're still not driving. You still may not know how to get there. So you still have to show some deference to the OGs that are involved. And it actually made it easy for me because I grew up listening to Sting.
That's right.
You know, it was a bucket list thing for me.
Yeah.
So they probably could have taken advantage of me, you know what I'm saying, in some
sure.
business ways. And I would have been like, all right, cool. Because I understood what it was going to do, you know what I mean, overall. So the process of everything just happened. I had gone to Amsterdam, come back, and I was just at home on a Sunday. I had the guitar, and I was trying to come up with a song for a friend of mine in Amsterdam who's an artist. And usually I kind of try to, before Toxic was a thing, I have always been in that arena, in the stadium. I may not be right in front of the stage all the time, but I'm there. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
So I just decided to do something different. I'm like, let me write a love song. And for some reason, a lot of times when I write love songs, they do well. That's another thing. It's like you gotta start paying attention to what's working for you.
That's right.
Not what's working for everybody else. And that's the luxury you have as an independent artist that you don't have when you're signed. So it's like take the things that you have as an indie and use them to your advantage. You could release 5 projects, get your skills tight, know exactly how you want your business to go, be an amazing songwriter, and then get a bag. And now you've got the recipe. You put one out and everybody's like, best new artist, Kameron Corvet. It's like, man, I've been
doing this for 20 years. Right.
But we have the luxury, whereas if you get signed and you release something and it doesn't go well, you have the potential of being dropped, and now it could make it more difficult for people who want to do business with you. So my whole philosophy, and it hasn't happened overnight, has been just work with what you have, figure out how to make what you have work in a unique way, you know, as well. So wrote this song. My guy in Amsterdam, they were playing around and they weren't going to do anything with it, I guess. Sent it to a friend of mine. And at that time, I had written the acoustic part for the record. So I composed the song, and I wrote the chorus, and I wrote the vamp.
Gotcha.
So a large amount of the song. Sent it to a friend of mine. He added some elements just to make it into a more robust demo.
Sure.
And I didn't think anything about it. He had a conversation with another guy, amazing songwriter. That guy was like, yo, send that to me. He ends up writing a verse, a part of a verse. he collaborates with Shaggy frequently. He lets Shaggy listen to it. Shaggy's like, I love the song. So I'm like, all right, cool. Shaggy placement, I'll take that,
Nice.
you know? We waited a while, and then all of a sudden it was like, all right, here's the deal. John Legend is going to do your part. Because at first they were going to keep me on it.
Nice.
I'm like, cool, great.
Yeah.
Then they were like, no, John Legend's going to do the chorus.
Gotcha.
I'm like, cool, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe like 2 weeks later, they're like, actually, John Legend's not going to do the chorus.
Okay.
Sting's going to do the chorus. I was like, even better. Yeah. So the way that situation happened, Shaggy was in LA doing a feature for a completely different artist. And that was being orchestrated by Sting's manager. During a break in the studio session, Sting's manager asked Shaggy to play some new things he was working on. He played an unfinished version of the song. He called Sting, says, I got a song I think you would be great on. Sent him the song, and he drove over and they started recording it. And even still, after that moment, I had to wait another 2 years for the song to come out because it was just a song.
Yeah.
They weren't going to do anything with it. It was a great moment.
Sure.
They had never worked together before.
Okay. So this is the birth of that whole project.
The whole thing started with the song.
Come on.
Whole thing.
Wow.
All right. So, but even then, I still had to be patient. Still had to go teach my youngins. I was a French teacher back in my day. So still had to go there and do my job. But I'm dreaming, you know, that this song is going to come out.
Yeah.
And then when it finally started to come out, it was a combination of understanding a rollout process. You can tell who's got a big bag behind him based on the rollout process, who has tenure and skin in the game, you know, all of that. So I like watched them build this together, but basically it was just a song, and then Sting and Shaggy collectively decided, you know what, let's make an album out of this vibe that this song created. So they made this whole album, and you know, I got to see, you know, the song I wrote be a single, a legitimate single, be performed everywhere. Like anywhere you could think of a song being performed in order to say, all right, it's something. You know, the Queen of England and the royal family, the Super Bowl, the Grammys, you know. So it was a great experience, but I learned a lot, you know. I learned a lot by playing with him and Shaggy, you know. It was just something that you know how you wonder if you'll ever get something that's going to make you feel like you are doing the right thing. Something that's going to allow you to tell your pops,
That's right.
Dad,
I
do this for a living.
That's right.
You know, that was like the moment for me. But the reality is what happens after that.
Right.
You know, so it was like going to the mountaintop to be able to see it in somebody else's car say, you know what, I want to come back here, you know, one day. So I use a lot of the things I learned in that process. Anytime they come into town or whatever the case may be, I can go and hang, you know, but that song like created a whole thing. They're doing a festival in Philly, and it's Sting and Shaggy together, you know. So every time I see them together, you know, I get reminded. They do the song still all the time. Right. So it's a great like resume.
Absolutely,
thing.
It's a fantastic accomplishment. I mean, it's one of those things that most singer-songwriters, that's a bucket list, or just would love to be able to accomplish. I mean, to have a placement with Sting and Shaggy, specifically Sting. I mean, no diss to Shaggy, because I'm a big fan of Shaggy as well. But as a musician, Sting is like one of the standards. To me, when I look at that, I'm like, that's equivalent to a Michael Jackson, a Prince, a Stevie Wonder level placement in the big scheme of things for the music business.
When you consider longevity as a part of, you know, like people talk about in hip hop, who's better, Nas or Jay-Z or whatever. Longevity matters. Absolutely. You know, that's why LeBron James can be in the conversation of greatest of all time, because of the longevity, and that it takes so much to be able to be that good for so long. So the consistency of being at the top of the game is important. Sting is one of those guys who has been around through music. And a lot of times generations and fads can take you out of the game because you could be not relevant anymore. but Sting has been one of the most successful people you can think of when it comes to money, awards, accolades, whatever, having creative control, doing other things, so I got a chance to see through being around both of them kind of what I would like, my career to be like.
No, absolutely. I mean, he's a world artist. He makes world music.
Yeah.
So, and it's almost genreless, right? It's like, I know he does a lot of folk style music, but if I sang his same songs, they'll be R&B.
Yeah,
exactly. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, you know what I mean?
And when you think about it too, though, right? Sting is like a part of the culture.
100%.
Missing You by Diddy.
No, 100%.
Nas.
Yeah.
Like Lucid Dreams, Juice WRLD.
That's right.
That's all Sting.
That's right.
So, it doesn't necessarily play as well in an urban conversation or an urban environment. Like, I didn't come back to Atlanta and have a ticker tape parade or nothing. I wasn't sitting in no convertible waving. No. There was no big celebration, but in certain circles, like if I went to Paris and I went in the studio, if I went to LA, cool. So I got to see that, being a world artist, being an international artist is very important to me. I think it should be important to as many artists as, that anybody who does it should want to be known outside of their own 100%. Place, because you never know. That may be where the big start comes from. Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? So,
Man, that's fantastic. I love hearing that story. I've always wanted to ask you that after hearing that, first of all, hearing the song, and then obviously knowing all the incredible, hills and climbs, essentially, that song ended up winning a Grammy and just ended up being this world-recognized record. It's like a classic record now. You know what I'm saying? So 10, 20 years from now, people are going to be going back playing, that's such a great record. You know what I mean? All right, so what's next for you? Like, you've done that. I know you're still performing. You're still creating music. Do you have anything new coming?
It's always something new, but I think you try to outdo yourself every time.
Yeah.
So I've kind of just been letting things happen, like You With Me.
Yeah.
I didn't plan that. I just wrote the record, was present every time that it was time to deal with it, and I let it kind of do its own thing. I've been working on a project probably for the last 2 or 3 years before the pandemic that is really like a passion project that I don't want to just let go until it's right.
Ready, right.
But in the meantime, I am releasing, other records. But the purpose to me is like changing the landscape of music, in terms of R&B. I used to go and have a lot of label meetings, and people would say R&B's not selling, R&B's dead, and all that stuff. It's a farce. It's not true at all. It's just we as a community, and I say we because that's how it's black and white. It is what it is. We are very accepting people.
Yeah.
We love it. If it sounds good, we love it.
That's
we
right.
love you.
That's right.
Come to dinner tomorrow
right.
night.
That's right.
Have dinner with my mom and my grandma. And all I know is you make good music. You know what I mean? Yeah. But other genres outside of urban or traditionally black genres, they aren't as welcoming, to people who don't look like them. Look at Lil Nas and what he had to go through in order for a song to be recognized in the country music category. So changing the landscape and the perspective has to do with reaching generations that aren't familiar with the music that we're familiar with, but giving them a new way to like it.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Like, if you think about anybody who like was in their late teens, anywhere from 15, let's say, to on up, in early 2000s, if they make music, they can be relevant right now.
Sure.
Because, it's like in the early 2000s, what you had, Acoustic Soul by N.D.R.E., you had Music's first album, you had Erykah Badu, Mama's Gun.
That's right.
D'Angelo, Voodoo, all of that.
Tough.
Right? If you were 4 years old in 2000, you were sitting in the back seat listening to that.
That's right.
Look at Ari Lennox.
That's right.
So you got Shaka Khan that begets Erykah. Erica that begets Ari. So it's like, you know, things come around in cycles. They say even a broke clock is right twice a day.
Sure.
So it's like if you perfect what it is you do and are prepared, then when it's time for you as a musician or as an artist, you got to go full steam ahead, be ready, have records ready, understand how do I want to perform? Like I'm on a budget. Yeah. So how do I make a budget performance work for me? Sure. You know, so that's just like the nuts and bolts of the side that we don't want to deal with when we first decide we want to do music. We want everybody to do our job for us. Right. Because it ain't our job. Right. Yeah. It ain't your job.
But it's called the music business.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, you know, if you want to sign the checks, you might as well know, you know,
what's going on.
Yeah. If you were in the corporate world and your dad owned a tech company and you were scheduled to take over, you know, there are certain executives that would just tell their son, hey, you're going to run the family business. Other ones would say, look, you're going to start at the bottom. That's right. You're going to work every part of this company level, so that you're going to learn how to be an executive when it's time. So I look at my career now from more of a young executive standpoint than just an artist standpoint. Sure. And I realize that some of the time that it's taken has been in order to prepare me to do that properly.
That's fantastic. I mean, the things that you've learned as an independent artist, you're learning that from a fundamental standpoint. Before, I'm sure you were printing CDs. You have to find out what that costs. You got to go through Copycat, CD Baby, or whatever company. Then you have, all right, now we got to go to however we're distributing it on, you know, not social media, that as well, but iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, whatever. These lessons, so you're learning it from a fundamental standpoint, business-wise. And, of course, managing your own career, that definitely prepares you. I think more people like independent artists who have those experiences behind the curtain, essentially, have more experience to be set up for those type of positions in the corporate world than the artists that sign to the label. Because all they know is they know everybody behind the curtain is working for them, essentially, but they're not learning all those fundamental things. That's why a lot of them that were signed did well, and now they're no longer in the limelight, aren't doing so well financially.
So many artists don't even know how to record themselves.
That as well, right.
Like, you're an artist, you're a songwriter, and you don't even know how to capture your ideas other than recording it in your phone or writing it down. Like, there's a better way to do it now. You know, that type of thing is on us. You know what I mean? We can't depend on somebody for that. If you're going to be the one who's saying, I don't want to do this or I don't want to do that, you got to be able to show a better way of doing something. Otherwise, your career will be dictated for you, you know? And I think anybody in today's music industry that's of that type, you know, you're gonna get taken advantage of.
For sure. Listening to, like, going back to your music, you mentioned before at certain times you'd be writing more toxic. But I think more of my favorite songs are from you are love songs. And you found that niche, and obviously that's working for you. Like, to your point, are there any new artists that you're listening to that that you have heard that you're like, man, they're in the right lane or the vein that inspire you still? Oh man. Or are you still inspired? I mean, obviously you can always be inspired by the legends of old.
You know what? I think part of what it is rediscovering artists that have inspired me, but with an older view. So listening to, like there was an aha moment for me where I'm like, wait, El DeBarge had brothers? And his brothers could sing?
Yeah.
And his older brother was a dog? I mean, Bobby DeBarge? So it's like, that discovery happens by listening to a song I may have heard 1,000 times in the backseat of the car. So that's a heavy part of what influences me and inspires me right now. I think a lot of hip hop inspires me as well. There are a select few artists that I think make music that inspires me. I think from a songwriting standpoint, most of them I've either already met or been in the studio with or whatever. So I try not to allow too much current music to inspire me or influence me, because then you start chasing what's a fad, And I think that's another slight critique of urban music. We are the cool kids. Yeah. We always making something cool.
That's right.
So there's that pressure to create the new cool thing.
Right.
when other genres of music, there could be a fad related part of that, but they never abandoned the traditional form. You're not gonna go into country music and not hear somebody play acoustic guitar and sing.
That's right.
They don't have to be ripped with a 6-pack. They don't have to have, all the tattoos or anything like that. They could just sit down with some Wrangler jeans on, some beat up boots,
and tour forever.
And tour forever.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to do that
Yeah.
in our genre, if you will, of music. I mean, it's funny because if you look at the artists that are touring and still doing it, they're the ones who've created organic music. They're the ones that have at least certain records that are tasteful, that could be played on radio. It's like, if you're cussing in every song, man, how do you really think it's gonna go as far as it could go?
That's
you know,
right.
If you're trying to get people to remember it, are you gonna give them all these words to remember, man?
Yeah.
Do you remember studying in high school? Was it easier for you to study a small definition or a long one?
Right.
So it's being practical from the beginning and not trying to make it work at the end.
Yeah.
Not trying to force it.
One thing I think about to that point is, like, going forward, what are we going to play at the wedding? What are we going to play at this family celebration? What are we going to play at a funeral? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
True.
if we're not putting out enough content across the board that covers all the bases, it's not enough balance.
Yeah.
So I listen to your music, and I think of, first of all, R&B music is, to me, it's not just one thing, right? So you have post-disco, you have that's a form of R&B. It's more dance music, R&B with a lot of synthesizers. You have funk. Those are R&B elements, a lot of it. I mean, it's R&B. Then you have soul. That's a level of R&B.
Yeah.
And then you have the R&B that merged in the 90s, R&B hip hop. That's still R&B.
Yeah.
So it's all these different things, and it doesn't capture into one thing. You mentioned D'Angelo, one of my favorite artists. Erykah Badu, India.Arie. We called that neo soul.
Yeah.
But then you got people like Joe. You had people like Brian McKnight. You had Jodeci, Boyz II Men, right? And then you have people like, I'm a fan of Lucky Day. I'm a fan of, there's a guy, Omar Xavier. I like him a lot. It's a lot of fantastic, Bruno Mars, Chris Brown. All these guys have different elements that they add to R&B music that doesn't confine it into one thing. But from a subject matter standpoint, I feel like we need to be more diverse within the English language.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Think about a guy like Bruno Mars, right? Bruno Mars can move between genres, record to record, right? He could do an album that sounds like The Police. Walked Out of Heaven. That sound. Or is it Locked Out of Heaven? Or
Locked Out of Heaven.
Sounds like a Police record.
Yeah.
Right. He could do the whole Versace on the floor situation, which is like that guy New Jack Swing.
New Jack Swing element.
You know. So he's, and I'm sure other artists as well, he's been able to adapt to what he grew up listening to, because his career is as a performer, listening to all types of music.
That's right.
So that's a classic example of an artist who's been able to kind of feed his interest in multiple genres of music and still create something that's new. So, we have been able to kind of experience it, but we need to kind of, I think, just encourage it, foster it more in our artistic community. But you have a great point with what are we going to play here or there? Like, you remember Jesse Powell? Smacking.
That's
you
right.
know? And it became that song. I think Major is an artist that I rock with.
Major's
BJ the Chicago Kid.
BJ's dope.
Ro James, Inglewood Sir. Like,
Yep.
I know who's out there, who's
That's right.
doing what. Kevin Ross, another
Sick.
dope artist as well.
Yeah.
So there are artists out there, I think that the pathway that we have to go, what we got to go through to discover them, it becomes a lot sometimes. And then how many artists don't get the support, for every BJ the Chicago Kid, there's like 100 guys who never got an opportunity that could have maybe done something as well. So it's like, it's on people like us, like this type of platform gives people an opportunity to tell their story. And I think when we get invested in the story, behind the artist, then
That's right.
we get more of an opportunity to appreciate them.
Absolutely. And the whole point of me even, creating this platform is to try to get people to listen to R&B music more. You know what I mean? So this is a continued conversation. So
Definitely.
I'm always like, can we talk R&B, right?
Yeah.
So with that said, man, look, Cameron, it's an absolute pleasure to have
Appreciate
you
you,
on the
bro.
show, man.
Yeah.
Pleasure to meet you. And we're going to have to do some work, bro. We're going to have to do some work.
Definitely.
Look, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode. Can we talk R&B?
Can we talk?